And very happy to have you here today.
Me
You
too.
are leaving again
Mm-hmm.
in another 2 days.
Yes, on Wednesday,
Okay, you're off too?
Bali.
Okay. So how long will you be there for?
This time about 2 months.
So when you travel to Bali for 2 months, right, you have already have gotten your pass already sorted out to be there for 2 months, or you go there and sort it out.
What do you mean by the past?
But we can only travel there for 30 days, right? The visa allows us
The
to?
visa.
Yeah.
I think in Bali you can request for a different visa upon arrival. So you have
Okay.
to first purchase that visa upon arrival, and that would give you the option to extend your visa after the first 30 days.
How long have you been away this time?
Full-time traveling, I would say, since January 2020.
Yeah.
But I've come back. I've returned to Singapore quite a few times.
So the last time you were back here?
In December
Okay,
last year.
also about half a year ago.
No, but then I stayed for 2 months. I've really only been away
Okay,
for
4
about
months.
2,
Okay.
3 months. Yeah.
Does it feel different this time? Because you left in the thick of the pandemic, and this time round when you are back, the restrictions have already come off quite a bit.
Definitely. I feel people are happier. There's less pain, I would say.
What kind of pain?
I think pain in the form of feeling restricted. Also feeling like anything they do is wrong.
Okay, so
was
just
what I
not being
felt.
able to like express themselves a lot.
Yeah. I didn't feel like people felt very free the last time. I think now it's better because the restrictions are not as strict, even though they're still there. But
It feels pretty much like as though we are back to maybe like, I wouldn't say back to normal, like back to last time, definitely not. There's still like masks and all, but in terms of like family gatherings and all, yeah, it feels pretty good.
I think the phrase new normal also kind of tells you, or it also kind of makes you question what is normal and why have we accepted certain things to be normal. So I was just having a conversation with my friend, and we were just talking about what the majority of Singaporeans consider as normal. And I think COVID was a really good opportunity for us to now really question why we consider certain things as normal and other things as abnormal.
What are the countries that you've been to, that you stayed for considerable amount of time in these 2 years?
The first one was England. I was kind of stuck there for 5 months. Second one was in Albania. I was there for 3 months. And then I went to Croatia, and I spent nearly a year in Croatia. Then the next one was in Thailand, this island called Kopangan. I
Yep.
spent about 3 months there.
All very considerable amount of time. So during COVID, right, there's always been this debate about how for the collective good of everybody, society would have to accept trade-offs in terms of personal freedom, personal expressions, and even in terms of very pragmatic kind of inconvenience that we face on a daily basis. Across all these places that you have stayed in, experienced the culture, do you think there's a difference between our idea of societal responsibility?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. I mean, even in the term society, what we consider is societal, even though we would like to think that it's confined to a space, which a geographical space, it's usually like what we think is society is usually our immediate friends and family. And that's why, because of the limited knowledge we have of what other people feel, like, you know, if you and I are strangers, your family and my family would be different, right? You know, our friends would be completely different. If we don't have any mutual connections, our paths don't cross at all. I could say that you live in a completely different society than I do, even though we live in Singapore.
Do you think so?
Even within a certain country, I feel that there are multiple different societies living in one country, because what informs you of society is very different for people. So, of course, this thing is made more extreme, or it's made more obvious when you cross a different country, because then every country has their own laws and regulations, and that definitely impacts like the larger sense of the word society. So for sure in Europe, I think because generally, very generally speaking, people do feel they are more attuned and they're more aware of what they personally want. Whether or not other people think it's right and wrong, it's not so much of a concern to them. Whereas I think in Asian societies or particularly in Singapore, we do care a little bit more on what other people think is right and wrong, and not just what we feel. So we might be aware of what we want and what we don't want, but we are also very, very aware of what other people might think.
I don't want to make it sound very binary, like this is right, this is wrong, this is, but do you, during these 2 years, have you ever been at a place whereby you feel like people are selfish?
I think that's a very subjective.
Yeah, it's very subjective, but I want to come back to what earlier you spoke about the different definition of society, like, if you live in a different family. Do you think probably it sounds more like community than society? And then it's all these small communities, big or small, that make up the society.
I think the word is different, community, society.
Yeah.
People call it different things. Tribe, village,
Yeah.
People. Ultimately, I think when you call something a society, you feel that this society will understand you. And so sometimes when you feel like your society doesn't understand you, you feel alienated.
Yep.
And that can be even from your own friends and family. So if I, for example, most people would feel understood by at least their friends and family. Then they don't feel alienated so much. But even if their friends and family don't understand them, that's when they feel like, on a larger, even on this level, I don't feel understood. Like, for sure, other people are not going to understand me. Or maybe they might then want to leave and have distance from their friends and family and go find, their society, so to speak, or their people. These words are very interchangeable. But ultimately, I feel what people just really want is to be understood. And they don't necessarily need people to agree with them, because I think, the understanding is that what I want might not be what you want, vice versa, but people want to be understood.
So the idea is really that if the sibling or the parent who you have lived with for 25 years, 20 years, 30 years, if even they don't get where you're coming from, or I would think that maybe it's just a case of precisely because they know you, and therefore they choose to give in to you and understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think misunderstandings happen when people start speaking in different languages, so to speak. Misunderstandings happen all the time, and it's down to our ability on whether or not we want to solve and resolve that misunderstanding. But sometimes it becomes very difficult to want to resolve a misunderstanding because your ego gets in the way.
Yeah.
You feel hurt. You feel like, how could you do this to me? Like, how could you feel this way about me? But to get to that stage must have been us assuming they think a certain way. You know?
Us assuming that they think a certain way.
It's an assumption that they think, or they think or feel a certain way, because if you're not asking them, can I clarify? Like, if
so
you
we feel
say
internally,
this,
we assume lah.
Yeah, we assume.
Okay.
We definitely assume, because it's the easy way out, right? It's always easier to assume, because then you don't have to ask.
Yeah, and
You have to
also
clarify.
I suppose sometimes maybe the idea of the truth hurts as well.
Oh yeah, truth hurts. Yeah,
Yeah.
truth definitely hurts.
Like, I'd rather not clarify and just assume rather
Because
than...
it hurts the ego.
Yeah.
Because then, every time you ask or clarify something, there is the possibility that your perception was wrong. So if your ego is very protective of yourself, there's a less likelihood that you want to kind of put your ego out there to be,
This clarification
wrong.
process, right? Do you find easier that now we have tech at our disposal? We can WhatsApp someone, we can tele someone, we can write an email.
I think it depends on what people's preference.
What about yourself,
of
though?
communication for me.
Yep.
I've definitely come to a point in my life where meeting one-on-one is not the only communication I am comfortable with. I'm comfortable with words, no words, music, taste, feeling, a sensation, or even sound. I'm comfortable with different modes of communication.
the society that we live in, right? Okay, I'm just using the term again
Yes,
once
I
again very
understand,
loosely. So, firstly, in a very Asian kind of context, and secondly, in a very Chinese kind of context. And I think Chinese is there are a lot of deep-rooted things as well that sometimes you're expected to see as the norm. So, for example, if you look at the structure of our Chinese, a lot of our practices and traditions today, right? They have been around for like literally thousands of years, right? And you will even hear things Chinese, they tell you that, oh, if we share the same surname, then 500 years ago we are one family. Or they even tell you that, your root is in China, is in Asia, what your travels, right? You have been to mostly the Western countries, except for the stint. Yeah, you spend most of the time in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Croatia.
It was easier to
UK.
travel.
Okay.
Yeah,
During
the
COVID.
pandemic. Asia was very closed up. The borders were closed.
Okay. What are your views on very traditional kind of Asian thinkings and expectations that you have been expected to maybe sometimes live by because you have taken a path that is just off the beaten path, right?
Yeah. Actually, firstly, I don't feel that I necessarily completely identify with being Chinese because I'm pretty sure, so in the first place, I don't look very Chinese. So growing up in Singapore, sometimes people will come and ask me, what race are you? Or like, what are you?
Yeah. So what's your race?
By race, I'm Chinese.
Okay.
But even my parents, and because that's how I immediately get informed of whether I'm Chinese or not, right? I don't feel like my parents raised me up in a very typical Chinese manner. So
for example,
I never felt like, I don't. Okay, so what would you say is a typical Chinese family or typical Chinese like culture?
I would say down to the very nitty gritty, right? Even the small things like. I was just talking about this with my girlfriend the other day. About. So the context is that her sister was like during a family dinner. We were just talking about the expectations of getting married and how in Singapore when you get married in the conventional kind of way, you are expected to have maybe okay, legally you have to ROM when you're married. But then there's of course the dinner. Then at the dinner, right, there are a lot of unwritten rules that we sort of abide by as well.
Oh yeah?
Like for example, you would have to, it's not just your wedding dinner, right? It's also your parents' wedding it's also your parents, it's an occasion and an event for your parents as well. Is your Mandarin good?
还好.
还好. So in the very traditional kind of, if you go to the market, when someone goes for a wedding dinner or someone has a wedding event in the family, for the older generation, right, it's also like 谁谁谁娶媳妇. So she's bringing home a daughter-in-law today. So yeah, so they talk about 谁娶媳妇. Or if it's your daughter marrying off, you'll be, 今天今天 Madam Tan 嫁女儿. So what we were trying to establish is that for some of the young people, right, they might feel that it's my wedding. Like, why should I have to plunder to your preference or but then there comes the line whereby is it strictly on one end of the spectrum your wedding, you do what you want, or is it like on the other end of the spectrum it's like your parents marrying off, like having an event in the family and them being the head of the family, and where in the grey zone are we at? Okay, this is my wedding, but at the same time I respect what my parents want. So if my dad is, let's say, a business owner, right, and he has requirements for 30 friends and clients or associates and all to be there, then we will have to have 3 more tables for that, and like 2 more tables for mom because mom has friends and all as well, on top of all the relatives. So to me, these are like very Chinese kind of practices, traditions.
I see.
They are just very ingrained in us, right? We don't even think about them as like being Chinese, or even things like Chinese New Year.
Yeah.
go and buy yourself a new top. You know, you can, like, whatever it is, like when I was growing up, at least you buy yourself a new top. You can say that. And also, it's Chinese New Year. Please avoid wearing a darker top if you can, because we're going to visit great grandma, we're going to visit grandpa, grandma. You know, if you can, please wear something festive.
I see.
So these are, to me,
Right.
very
Yeah.
cultural kind of thing about being Chinese, raised a Chinese family. So what's your background
I
like?
don't have that.
Okay.
So if the question is like whether I was raised like with these like Chinese expectations of being a Chinese, no. And I think that's probably why I'm a little bit, or the way that I see life is different from most Singaporeans. I think my parents raised me very differently. Me and my brother raised us very differently, in the sense that they never quite had a very big hierarchy, like, oh, I'm your parents, so listen to what I say, and what I say is like, you know, definite. My parents would ask, oh, you disagree, why?
Okay.
And if I disagree and I can prove logic, prove reason, they'll be like, that's interesting, you know. Then they will tell me whether they agree or disagree. But my family is I was born into a very loving family, which means that at the default of all of our actions and, you know, all of us, it's love. Which means it's a very unconditional kind of loving family. You can disagree with each other, but at the end of the day, you're family. So you're always going to be there for each other. You're always going to show love to each other. But you can disagree, of course. You know, disagreements are very normal, right? So I think what we have kind of established right now is, if let's say, like, so coming back to the wedding thing, right? Actually, when I got married, I did take into account what my parents wanted, what my ex-husband's parents wanted, but not because I need to do it or have to do it, but because I want to do it because it will make them happy. But I also knew that there were certain things I didn't want, and I made it clear to them that this is what I don't want. And if you are unhappy, or if you disagree, that's your emotion to deal with. I detach my responsibility as a filial daughter from that emotion. You know, you might end up feeling upset or hurt or disappointed. It's your emotion to deal with. I'm not responsible for it.
What's your definition of a filial daughter?
I think a filial daughter, or, you know,
or a child
in general, to be a good person, I think is to treat people with love and really give your energy to make them feel understood. Because at the end of the day, I can tell you I disagree with you, but at least I tell you I understand. I understand where you're coming from. I understand your thoughts, your emotions. I disagree, but I understand. It's that detachment from the identity in the first place. So I think identities are what we place upon ourselves. So, you know, for example, I'm a divorced woman. That's the identity that I give myself. If I introduce myself as a financial consultant, you know, so we are always attaching identities to ourselves, including being a daughter, including being a wife or a mother. You know, all these things are, of course, like, it's normal to that's the way that you will introduce yourself, because that's the side of yourself you want to present, right? Like, so here today, I'm here as a, like, digital nomad, for example. But I'm also a divorced person. I'm also, like, all of these things that I'm, you know, relating or identifying myself with. So I think there is a need to kind of detach from the identities when it becomes toxic, and when it becomes when it affects our actions so much that we compromise what we want in order to fulfill the identity, the role of the identity, if it makes sense.
Yeah. Oh no, there's so many things to unpack. Maybe coming back to this, I forgot what you talked about. But, you know, when, giving people the energy to make them feel like, at the very least, you understand where they're coming from, like putting yourself in their shoes, right? Understanding their perspective, brings us back to this, what we spoke about, ego as well. You know, sometimes people are just so adamant that I'm right. You know, your point of view is wrong. But when actually, in fact, I don't think sometimes it's very difficult to try and understand where they're coming from. Like, we come back to the example of the wedding again. If you feel like, you are, it's very selfish that you want to invite 30 of your friends because, we are on a budget, we are blah, blah, blah. Coming back to where we're talking about, maybe it's prudent to clarify the financial arrangement.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be spoken about, right? I think most parents are fair. They might not expect you to. They know that wedding's expensive as well. If they have 30 friends, they are probably going to be happy to. You can clarify. Are you going to like collect the ang paos from your friends? Are you going to pass it back to me? It's possible, right?
For sure.
But this thing about ego, right, is that we just don't want to most of the time because we feel like, hey, I'm right. And sometimes in the heat of things, right, you also don't see that as well.
Yeah. Or sometimes your ego is already hurt. So you're already in a defensive mode.
But the other thing, right, also is when the other party is very adamant that they are right. And even when you take the position of, I understand where you're coming from, you are trying to like portray and convey that vibration and that energy to them too. But they are still then how do you deal with that when...
I mean, the one thing is you can't control how they react. So when you're putting yourself out there, when you're putting your thoughts and your truth out there, you can't control how they will react to your truth.
Unconditional love from your parents, right? Do you remember in your memory like the biggest argument that you had with your parents over something?
They were all misunderstandings. So we never quite disagreed with so many things. I guess one thing is like religion lah. Yeah, because my parents are, or at least most of my family, they identify with the Christian, identity of being Christian. I don't. So that's definitely a sore subject that we don't really talk about, only because there's really no point to talk about it anymore. Like at this point, I've stated my stand, I've explained why, and whether they want to accept or not accept is completely up to them. There's no way that I can control the outcome, and I also don't find a need to, because at the end of the day, to put it in a Christian like sense of things, when judgment day comes upon you, none of your family members and friends are going to be around. You meet your God and you answer for your own actions and your own life.
Okay.
You're not responsible for anyone else's.
When do you start sort of like standing up against your parents in terms of stating your beliefs, alternative beliefs to them? At what age?
I think I mentally left church when I was 15. I probably physically left church when I was about 18 to 19.
Because you were attracted by another religion, another belief system? Or what is just you would rather be a free thinker kind of identity?
No, not at all. I mean, all those are labels, right? That we have to choose to give ourselves. Christianity just never sat with me. Like it was just something I never agreed with, I mean, of course, the fundamental things that they talk about, love, be kind,
very
fundamental
universal,
things, very universal, right? Of course, I agree with all of that, but there were certain things that I've been listening to over and over again in church that I did not agree with, and sometimes it would piss me off so much I would just like stand up and leave and just be like, Dad, I'll wait for you outside. And in the first place, my parents went to separate churches, which confused like the hell out of me. Like if you're both Christians, like why are you going to different churches? Why do you get to choose which church you want to go to, and why do I not get to choose which religion I subscribe to? So from a very early age, I started studying about other religions, and then what I realized was, at the base of most religions that people subscribe to, other than like cults and whatever, they talk about the same universal truth, which is love, which is that by default all of us are made from love. And so obviously you can love a person but not like their actions. You can love someone and not like them, but at the core of it, we are all made of love. And so after I kind of understood that concept, to me, then it's up to me to figure out what I want to kind of identify with or not. So it didn't really matter to me anymore. Whether I'm religious, spiritual, agnostic, atheist, whatever, like it didn't really matter to me anymore, because personally I do believe in the concept of love, and I do believe that we are all capable of love.
This concept of love that you talk about, right? is sometimes so intangible.
Mm.
Like for someone who is hungry today,
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about love, we are all made of love. We are taught to love and we are expected to love. What is love to you?
I think love and showing love is different.
Okay, maybe. Sorry, let me just interrupt you for a while. When you say that we are all made of love, like what does that mean?
I'm just trying to find the best way to make this like easier to understand. Okay, how do you identify between two different species? Like for example, what is the difference between you and a monkey?
Visually,
Mm-hmm.
we are fundamentally different, right? Like one's an animal and one is a human.
Okay, how about you and a table? What's the difference?
Emotions.
Where does emotions come from?
Emotions. Well, I suppose it comes from the brain, right? Like our connective.
What's inside the brain that makes you different from a table?
I don't know. Maybe like experiences, memories,
You're describing what it is, but you have to name it.
our thinking process.
Consciousness.
Okay, consciousness. Okay.
So you're conscious and a table is not.
Yep.
So I feel that consciousness is made out of the fabric of love. Love, in a sense, is the material that creates consciousness. Well, that's what at the current moment, due to my limited knowledge, what I feel is...
Does this stem from any particular school of thought or religious teachings? Or
I think it's something that I have been able to like put in words because of how I've felt. You know how if you've never experienced something, you can't explain how that thing looks like or feels like to someone else. For example, if you've never seen or experienced, touched an elephant before, and if I tell you what's an elephant, I can only tell you like the experience and the visuals and the sound of it, the touch, whatever, based on my own experience. So I can look at an elephant and paint you one side of the picture, and that will be my definition of an elephant, right? But if you ask someone else who has seen an elephant, they might tell you a different story.
Like the comic of us like touching different parts of an elephant.
So
Okay.
I feel like we are all talking about the same thing, the elephant. And the elephant does exist.
Okay.
But then our own interpretation is very different. But it doesn't matter because we're all talking about the same thing. So the person who would really know what an elephant is someone who has seen the entirety of an elephant. And even if you can know what's outside of an elephant, dissect the brain when it's dead, whatever, break it down into like the very, atom of what makes an elephant, you're still not going to know like what an elephant is because you don't understand the consciousness. Like we can't communicate with elephants, right? Number one.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the difference between species. When you can communicate and understand each other, that's when a species is unique.
Okay.
So scientifically, they say that a species is different from the other when they don't mate. So for example, an elephant, we don't mate, right? Even if we do mate, you don't reproduce.
Yeah.
But for me, I think what I want to focus on is the fact that humans, we can communicate and we can kind of understand each other. So we share the same consciousness, if that makes sense. So to me, the fabric of that consciousness is love. So maybe if we talk to an elephant today, they'll be like, oh yeah, we were talking about the same thing, but we don't call it love.
Okay. So the fundamental belief is that, in Chinese it says 人之初性本善. Like humans are fundamentally kind. Because there's always this debate, right? Whether we are fundamentally kind or we are fundamentally evil.
Yeah.
And if you go into the rabbit hole of who's right and who's wrong, there are many even examples that you can quote or cite to say that humans are kind, humans are evil. In your travels, you would have I was reading up on what you put out in the internet as well. There's this incident whereby you and your friend were going to like hitchhiking somewhere, right? And you had this gut feeling that something's not right. It's like red flag, But it turned out to be
an act of kindness,
a good experience. Yeah. How do you fundamentally approach similar experiences like this, whereby do I give someone the benefit of the doubt and say that, yeah, I think it's okay at the expense of safety? Or is it more of like, I'll be more cautious and just be more careful, and I would rather forego that potential experience and be safe?
I think everything you do is a calculated risk.
Yeah.
Even leaving the house, even deciding to wake up is a calculated risk.
Okay.
It's just how conscious you are of your actions. So for me, if I ever feel like I'm in a risk that I cannot take, in a risk that is greater than I can accept, then I won't do it. And if you choose not to do it, you choose to close that door, you will never know what's on the other side of the door. So it's not like I don't feel like I'm missing out, To me, just at any one point of time when you have to make a decision, imagine if there are like, maybe 12 doors that you could have opened and you just happen to pick one. You're never going to know what's going to happen, behind the 11 other doors, right? But it's just you picked one and then that's it. I don't really think about like the what if anymore.
How do your parents react when you first told them 2 years ago that you are going on this adventure?
So, I didn't like set out to leave for so long. I was only going to travel around for 1 month in Mexico. So the trip started in Mexico. And Mexico was this, to me, a magical place where I met so many people where I finally felt understood. So it showed me that for the longest time, I didn't feel understood in Singapore.
Do you think you would have found that sense of feeling understood if it hadn't been Mexico?
Oh, yeah. Because the people that I connected with were not from Mexico. They were basically all foreigners, but they happened to be in this place. And I connected with the foreigners because, number one, it was difficult for me to connect with Mexicans because I don't understand their language. So the language barrier is already one thing. So, I couldn't feel like I identified a lot with Mexicans. But without, like, having said that, like, even though we couldn't understand, their actions, the way they treat me, their smiles, everything, made me feel like I was already home. So, again, communication doesn't need to happen only in words. It could just be the hug, it could just be a smile, it could just be, like, the way they treat you, But, yeah, definitely what I felt was I met a lot of people that I felt, were similar. In terms of like how we think and what we want in life ultimately. So then it made me very acutely aware, like suddenly acutely aware that, oh, you mean like for the last don't know how many years of my life, I actually didn't really feel very understood in Singapore. So what got me, what helped me make the decision to continue traveling was because, number one, the pandemic happened, and then it was a very immediate decision I had to make. Do I want to go back and be on lockdown and be stuck in Singapore, or do I want to continue traveling in a foreign place, foreign countries? I didn't mind being stuck in England because I knew that at least that would give me physical and mental space from people here, from friends and family here. So they gave me my blessing. They gave me their blessings. My family were like, do what you need to heal. So my intention was to heal, right? For that, that 2 years, it was just to heal. And yeah, I experienced that.
So it doesn't need to be Mexico per se.
Oh, no, not
you could
at
have
all.
found that group of friends in China, in Thailand, or in US.
Yeah. I even feel like now I can find it in Singapore as well.
Okay.
I definitely have met more people who are like me, who have maybe felt a little bit alienated, throughout their lifetimes as well. And I have found them here.
But the mental space and that proximity kind of concept is also what you mean.
It helped. It helped.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
Because at one point, at any point of in time when you're like, when all the different senses are heightened and you're challenged in so many ways, right? Your body needs rest also. So you choose the easy thing.
Is this the first time you backpack for a month?
That was the first. No, actually, no, it was not the first time. The first time I backpacked for a month was in Sri Lanka, but that wasn't solo. So Mexico was my first solo backpacking experience for 1 month.
Okay. When I was younger, right, I really wanted to try backpacking. And I did. It wasn't for so long. So my family never afforded the money to go on like a family holiday. So the first time I was ever on a plane, right, was actually when I turned 18 and I was in Ngee Poly. I was doing my diploma, and there was a school community project that brought me to Chiang Mai. And that was my first time on a plane. That was my first time overseas, and I enjoyed myself a lot. And after I finished my third year, we had like this 6 months internship. Then I saved up some money, and I told myself that I'm going to experience a foreign land again. So I went to Bangkok. I stayed in a youth hostel, and I stayed in an 8-man's bunk. It was a mixed bunk actually. I still remember very clearly, when I stepped into the bunk, right, there was this guy sleeping on the bed, and he had this puddle of like liquid that's like wet, that's like around him, like a puddle of liquid around him, and it was actually pee. Like, so then the other guy told me that he came back last night so drunk and he just slept. I made a lot of good friends over there. We traveled together, and they're all from different countries. There was a German guy who is a policeman, but he could take no pay leave to travel. So the German police was still paying him, and he was traveling. There are 2 girls from UK who I still keep in touch on Facebook until today. So I saw them like get married, have children, and all. This community of backpackers, right? It's very difficult to tell somebody who haven't experienced it before. Just this idea of having this, most of the hostels that would have this common space communal space whereby people can just gather, have breakfast. Like usually in Thailand, at least in Thailand, they usually like prepare some bread for you, jam and butter. And so when you are looking to heal, right, do you think that it's also this group of people, the values that they broadly have that help you?
No, not really.
So the deeper question behind this would be like, do you think you were I mean, of course you're looking for something, right? A place to heal, and ideally people to connect with and all. Do you think because you were ready for it, so you found it?
I don't think those were the things I was looking for necessarily.
What were you looking for
The
then?
intention was to heal, but a place and people to connect with, not what else. I didn't intentionally want those things. I just wanted to heal.
So what's your expectation when you left Singapore?
Just to stay away from pain, or to lessen the pain that I already feel.
And you stayed in Mexico in a hostel kind of environment?
Different situation. I think sometimes I stayed with a friend.
Okay.
Hostels as well. Sometimes I rented an Airbnb on my own.
Okay.
Sometimes I just slept in a tent. It didn't really matter like where I was sleeping, to be honest, because my mind was so wrapped up in pain and trauma that to me I was just on survival instincts. It's just survive another day, just survive another day. So that's my intention, like to heal, like was already taking up all of my energy.
So you had depression during the time?
Depression came much later. I think the first stage was denial. Because I think if my mind immediately wrapped around what was really going on, I don't think I would have survived the trauma.
If you think about surviving like a day and a time, that means, am I right to infer that you had suicidal thoughts?
I didn't know I was... my mind didn't even tell me I was having suicidal thoughts. Because what your mind allows you to think is what your mind knows you are capable of taking. Because if you're not capable of taking something and you absorb that knowledge right away, I mean, depending on your, people as well, sometimes people's minds might play tricks on them. Sometimes, I don't know why your mind would do something. I don't think I can also figure out why, but I know at least for me, my mind was definitely protecting myself. So it was distracting myself from really understanding what was going on. It was just okay, you know what? For now, you just have fun. Just have fun. Just enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
And so having fun in a way for me was going out to meet people, appreciating beauty, and Mexico is beautiful. So yeah, I was just having fun in Mexico.
What was this pain that you were running away from?
Sorry. Running away from, subconsciously, I think the pain of abandonment. Yeah.
Because of the divorce?
Yeah, because of the way that we separated. So not necessarily the divorce itself, but I think the way it happened. Yeah.
How did it happen?
I will probably not go into details because it's quite a sensitive topic. But I think if I can describe it without actually, diverging the details, I think it just happened that, like, the way things happened made me realize that I didn't know who my ex was. Like, I didn't really know who he was. And then the realization that you married someone you barely know or you barely understand was very hard to wrap around. Like, it was very difficult to accept. And then the separation also made me realize I don't know who I am. I don't understand my actions. There is a distinct discrepancy between how I think, how I feel, what I say, what I do. And him aside, like my ex aside, I don't want to care so much about him. I wanted to focus on myself. Why did I get married? Why did I marry him? Why did I say this? Why did I do that? Why this? Why that? So it was more of like, it was difficult to face myself. Because if you are looking in a mirror, you expect to see yourself. And you expect to be happy with that reflection. But in that moment...
Metaphorically as well. Okay.
Yeah, but in that moment, I was looking in the mirror and I didn't recognize myself. I didn't feel like this was who I am. I just felt like I looked like somebody else.
You mean like visually feel like you look like somebody else?
Yeah,
as well?
visually I'm like, why do I look like this? So I think there was a moment in time where I was suddenly aware that I haven't been living life the way that I wanted to, and the way that I represent myself is also not accurate.
From a place of trauma?
The trauma
that this
helped
thing
me
happened.
see it.
Okay, the trauma helped you see.
Trauma helped me gain awareness that I was actually not, I was not living like the life that I wanted, and I wasn't the person I wanted to be. Yeah.
I intend to get married this year.
Congrats.
Intend to. Okay, the plans are, we are going to get married like this year or start of next year, and all. If I can ask you a bit more questions, just to share some of your experiences about marriage and the whole idea and concept of marriage. So I personally don't believe that, I don't think my girlfriend today would know 100% of me for sure.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's impossible, right?
No.
Sometimes we have like dark secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's important in a relationship before marriage to actively seek out these dark secrets, or is it okay that it's happened in the past? And
I think it's more of like, I would question why you want to know the dark secrets.
But would you want to know his dark secrets?
No.
Okay.
If he's not comfortable sharing that with me, no.
And then one day you find out about these dark secrets, then how? Then the question is, after you've already gotten married and all.
I think one thing is if, like, say I asked before and he told me a lie. The other thing is he just tells me I'm not comfortable sharing that.
But often the easier way out is to maybe cover it up with a lie. And sometimes I would think that we do it so subconsciously that we don't even realize in the moment that we...
Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
I feel that who someone is, right? Obviously, how we feel we can understand someone is by looking at their actions, what they say, what they do, and whatever. And
then we
try
infer the
to
values
think,
from there, yeah.
But I think sometimes it's important to realize that we don't always decide on things that are reflective of who we really are. Sometimes our actions steer away from who we really are, and that's why, sometimes if, let's say, you feel like you know someone and then they do something that surprises you or that is out of your expectation, you'll be like, oh, then can I trust this person? Because what they are doing is surprising you, But it's important to differentiate the actions from who they are. And it's also very important to remember people change all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many variables, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking
And it's
about.
completely normal to change. Change is the only constant because you are constantly receiving new information either about yourself or other people. Your perspective changes in a second. And I think that's why, you know, like when people spend a lot of time with each other, they start thinking together, they start doing certain things in the same way, they start thinking in the same way, because all of us affect each other. We are not just one person.
So we're like rubbing off each other, habits and
we
values.
Exactly. We exchange thoughts, we exchange energy, we exchange, you know, emotions. So whatever we do, we need to realize that we are all interconnected. So like back to that example, right? I would then put the action aside, ask yourself, can I accept this new knowledge? And if the answer is yes, then no problem, right? Because you can accept it. You can accept that it's it's you know, part of your partner's past, and it's not necessarily going to affect the future, right? Just because they've done it once doesn't mean they will do it again. And you know, again, I think we need to realize that we cannot control what happens in future, and we also cannot try to like change the future or manipulate it to some extent. Then the other thing is also to realize that, like, you know, flip it around, ask yourself, am I like constantly very aware of what I'm doing, what I'm saying, and do I actually always make sure that I'm not hurting someone else?
Okay.
So if we don't even do that, if we don't like at every single moment consider whether we're hurting someone else, because also sometimes you're never going to know whether or not something will hurt someone else, you know, you're never going to know. So if we don't also do that, you know, because, you know, a lot of times when we are upset with someone else's actions, right? That's actually a opportunity that opportunity is trying to tell us something about what we don't like about ourselves. So that's an expectation we make of ourselves. And, you know, do you think it's fair to like put that expectation on someone else who is a completely separate person, completely separate being? Yeah.
Okay. So what's your relationship advice or marriage advice to me? Just very broadly, knowing that I'm going to get married.
What kind of advice would you like?
Just your wisdom from your experience. If like just one or two pieces of advice.
I don't really have advice, but I guess if you are asking, I would just ask whether or not the both of you know what you want from the marriage, and does that tally? Have you sat down to ask each other certain difficult questions, and do your answers tally to a certain extent that you can both be like, oh, okay, like good, at least we tally maybe like 75-80%.
So there's like a common vision or common future that you are working towards.
Oh yes, for sure. And at this current stage of your life, because obviously who knows what was going to happen in the future, right? But at the same time, like how I look at marriage now is it's just an economic contract. So I mean, a piece of paper doesn't tell you how to behave. You know, I mean, obviously when you exchange your vows, there's a very standard like thing that you say to each other, but whether or not you really do it is a different thing. So it's still down to your personal choice.
It's a commitment lah.
Everything is a commitment. Being a friend is a commitment. Being a son is a commitment. Being a husband and a father is a commitment.
But the vow makes it, I suppose, it's our societal way of putting it to ink and paper.
But the reason why there's that piece of paper is so that it's easier for people to know, oh, okay, like they are sharing resources. They're sharing economic resources. They are basically merging like two families into one, or two kind
individuals
of,
into
you know,
one.
two individuals.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. How do you merge two individuals into one? I that concept never
okay. I
makes
get where you are
sense.
coming from. Like it's an economic kind of like contract arrangement.
It is. Yeah, because why else do you get married?
And that qualifies you for BTO from a government perspective.
It just makes things easier to arrange because then the government knows, oh, okay, most likely you're going to want to stay together. So probably I can take it as you are going to share finances, you're going to share like, you know, the mortgage, whatever, and to maybe maybe a company, like knowing that you're married means that, okay, most likely because you would consider your wife, your partner, so you would make certain decisions. I mean, I feel like the question of asking whether you're married or not is really outdated, and I feel like whether or not you have that piece of paper shouldn't define your relationship. It should be always knowing that you are each other's partner. So partnership means that not just you do your part, I do my part, but I help you to do your part, you help me to do my part, so that we are alleviating each other's burdens instead of adding more burden to each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's exactly why people have partnerships, right?
I mean, I think about it from very practical point of view. Like, if I'm away, I'm out of town, and my family needs something, if I'm not around, then are you able to help me run an errand? You know, just a very simple thing.
Yeah, but then, I would then ask your wife or your future wife, does she feel the same way, or does she have another understanding of what marriage is? You know, because I think like what you currently think, both of you, like what you want out of a marriage, it has to like tally, or at least your partner has to know what you are expecting out of the marriage, and you also must know what she's expecting out of a marriage.
Yeah. So does that put you a non-believer of marriage now?
No, not at all. I mean, there's nothing to believe in a marriage. There's also nothing to like not believe in a marriage.
So would you ever commit yourself to a marriage again?
Oh yeah, for sure. Marriage didn't do anything wrong to me.
Okay. So you would also, I mean, we were just talking to this with another guest the other day about how society has just structured it such that there are so many benefits to getting married as well.
Not just society,
The
but
act of getting married.
but you know, not just society, but literally politics.
Yeah.
You know,
Like taxation, housing, everything,
yeah.
Subsidies.
I mean, I understand the reason why they do that, because people are more likely to have children when they're married. And every country's main problem is human resource. You need an active population. And if not, there is no younger generation to continue whatever sovereign country you have, right? I mean, if at the end of the day, like Singaporeans stop having children and there's no younger generation, Singapore will disappear because there's nobody to be Singaporean.
We're already disappearing.
Yeah, so the reason why they want to encourage people to get married is because they need population to continue. They need you to reproduce. Not that they need, but they are trying to like encourage you to have children.
Elon Musk has been talking about this for a long time as well, about how the biggest crisis now is we are not having enough children. Like the fertility rate is very low, and we are literally killing ourselves as a society and as a country, and all. Yeah. You, during your travels, right, do you feel like you are a lot more vulnerable during your travels emotionally?
Oh no.
No?
In fact, I feel more free when I'm traveling.
Okay. Free in what sense?
I don't feel like I'm hurting people as much. Yeah. Okay, I mean, to be vulnerable just means that you are putting yourself out there to be judged, to be criticized.
Okay.
And I feel like I can be vulnerable anywhere, anytime, because even if I know I will be hurt from their judgment and criticism, I know I'm ready to take it. And I know that eventually I'll be fine. But for me, when I'm traveling, I have less relationships or long-term relationships to people I meet while I'm traveling. And so I have less chances of kind of hurting their feelings if I tell them something upfront. Whereas, when I'm in Singapore and people have known me for a very long time, sometimes I might say something that will trigger emotion in them and might make them feel hurt. And, my being at a natural state, I don't like to hurt people, obviously. But at the same time, I'm very aware that my higher self needs to say certain things to represent myself accurately. So if you say something to me and I don't agree, I will have to tell you that I don't agree. Because it's just me, I fully embrace that this is me. I will let you know But okay, now I've changed things in a way that before I tell you that I don't agree, I will ask you if you are ready for my opinion, or if you want to even know my opinion. So I think I've kind of grown up in that way where I also realized that like we said, the truth hurts. Sometimes people are not ready for the truth, then don't like budge your don't budge your way in and like enforce your truth on them, right? And also, truth is very subjective. What I consider as the truth might not be their truth. Right.
Yeah, many sets of truth actually.
Exactly. Truth is completely subjective.
Yeah. Like your truth can be right and my truth can be right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But so I really like conversations, and I even encourage like disagreements to happen, because I think that's a very good way for people to exchange knowledge and exchange information, and be like, oh, you might think this way because you've experienced this, and this is your experience, but let me tell you about my experience, and this is why I would disagree. And then for me, it's cool to hear that perspective and learn something from that. Because at the end of the day, you have to realize that in order for people to disagree, they must first feel like it's safe to do so. So creating a safe environment to say that like, this is a safe zone, we can disagree, and at the end of the day still have love for each other, still show kindness to each other. I think that's very important. So when I'm traveling, I don't have to worry so much about that, because even if we hurt each other's feelings, chances of, if they don't feel safe, then we don't see each other.
But then it just sounds like you're running away from long-term relationships.
Oh, no. So the only reason I'm not staying in Singapore is because I don't enjoy being in the city. And Singapore is very expensive.
Okay.
But I completely enjoy my relationships with my friends and family. And I don't ever shy away from having like difficult conversations. But of course, I have to be prepared that if I ever have an argument with a friend or with someone, and their feelings are so hurt that they choose to stay away, then I have to be prepared to lose that friendship, so to speak. Now, of course, it's hard lah. Who wants to like?
Yeah. I mean, we all fundamentally, ideally, we all like to be likable and keep our friends, and that's why sometimes you're just.
I think Singaporeans do lah, but not everybody.
Sometimes you'd rather just be polite and courteous and agree to disagree.
This I will feel is a very Singaporean thing.
Yeah. I learned about this thing about this concept of the truth recently. This new perspective from a lawyer actually. Like he was saying that everyone's truth is correct. So and that's why in the court of law, the judge's job is to look at what are the facts and what are the evidence. Because one set of facts and evidence can generate many truths and perspective for different kind of people. How do you think you have changed in the last 2 years, other than what you earlier mentioned about you maybe just being a bit more not pushing your perspective on someone else?
I've realized that in the past, when I used to do that, like when I used to kind of like want to impose my opinion on others, it was a trauma response.
Okay.
And it's a trauma response to once upon a time when I felt unheard and understood.
Once upon a time when you felt unheard and
misunderstood, sorry.
Okay. So when you were heard and misunderstood.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Unheard and misunderstood, yeah. So it's a trauma response to that, which is why whenever I just like have the feeling of like, being understood, or like not, if let's say I don't agree, I have that, like that urge to be like, oh, but this is how I feel. It's a trauma response to once upon a time when I felt like nobody cared about what I felt, or nobody cared about where I was, blah, blah, blah. So that's that. And then, but I feel like the way I've changed is also to recognize that I am not, everything that I say and do is going to affect people, and I just need to be aware of that. We're all interconnected. Is
it very tiring to think like that all the time? Like before you do something or say something, then you think?
No. It's not like
or is it a muscle that you can train to be more?
It's not about second guessing what you're gonna say or what you're gonna do. It's just being aware that you have to constantly be your authentic self, because then you are representing yourself well. So that even if people misunderstand me, it's not because I didn't represent myself well, but maybe, just choose to misunderstand me lah. They choose to like have formed their own impression or their own perspective of me, because then that's out of my control, right? What we can only choose to control is what we do, what we say, how we look. So I just want to always be my authentic self. So I hold first my self-responsibility to the things that I do and I say.
Well, what about the not hurting people? That desire to not hurt people. How do you achieve that? Because it sounds to me like if I want to make a very conscious decision to not hurt people, right, then I need to be a lot more careful about what I say, what I do,
So like
my intentions.
like little things, or I would maybe ask them first, like, is it okay if I share my opinion? Giving them the choice to accept what I'm gonna say or not, or even giving them like the chance to kind of debate. Like sometimes like people don't want to debate, right? Depending on different people, some people just don't like confrontation. They just don't want to debate because they just don't want lah, whatever the reason
Which is fine, yeah.
Yeah, which is completely fine. Then you ask them like, oh, is it okay if I share my opinion with you? Because sometimes like when people come to you and they tell you stuff, right, actually all they want is a listening ear. They don't need your opinion, you know. They just want you to listen and just be there with them. So right now it's just little things that you have to do, like ask first, or perhaps check yourself first. Check your reactions. Ask yourself, why am I reacting in this way? Is it really me that it's like is it really like that we have a problem with what they're saying, or is it like us having a very unreasonable reaction to their words and their actions? So the more we realize we have reactions to what people say or what they do or even what they look like, the more we can take it as an opportunity to get to know ourselves.
Yep. You need to leave at 5, right?
Oh, what time is it?
4:30.
That's fine. Yeah.
There, you have had some publicity in various media platforms the last 2 years, and you have been quite willing to share your experiences, your story, and your perspectives. And of course, it's a free world, right? So when you put out a perspective, naturally there are people who agree with you, wish you well, give you their blessings, and there will be other people who are like, hey, you're wrong. These people who have said that you are wrong, you are like, teaching a wrong way to think to the younger generation. What are some of the things that they have said about the wrong things that you have done? So-called the wrong things that you are preaching.
Right.
What's their concern?
It's going to be a bit hard to remember this because I generally don't remember.
Is there one that hit you the hardest? Like you feel like?
Not anything that really hit me, but okay, I guess there's one thing that I felt very sad for, which is that they brought in the class thing. That means I can do this because I...
Very privileged.
Correct.
Okay.
They use the word privilege, yeah. So it made me sad lah, because then actually it made me aware that, hey, actually, yeah, indeed, they are right.
There's truth in that.
There's truth in that. There's truth in that I am, I definitely have certain privileges, meaning I don't have to financially look after my parents, or physically, not yet. My parents are very supportive of my decision in life, and I don't feel bound to contributing, to this society. I mean, actually, I do lah, but that's a personal choice. I don't feel like I was forced to contribute to this society. I feel like it's a desire, it's a natural desire that my people, or that my audience, right, is always towards Singaporeans or like the Asian context. So yeah, like the things that definitely, the one that I remember is when they bring in class lah, income class, whatever, because then I definitely do feel helpless in the sense that there's nothing I can do to help you in that
although there's truth in it.
Yeah, of course there's truth in it, yeah. And I definitely acknowledge, and I'm very aware that these are the blessings that I've gotten in my life, and I'm very thankful and very appreciative to my parents for it. And Chinese privilege is also a privilege.
Yeah, just being the majority race. Yeah.
Just being Chinese is already a privilege in Singapore, and I'm very, very aware of that.
I was, prior to this interview, to this chat, I was just thinking about whether is there fundamentally a difference between like your lifestyle as a digital nomad and as like, for example, someone who is posted to Shanghai in a big bank working as a CEO.
Okay.
Because there are similarities and there are differences. So the similarities would be just that. Okay, I'm now thinking from the Asian parent kind of view lah. It would be that, hey, look, your child is away from you, right? So some people might think that, oh, okay, that means you are not able to like be filial to your husband, to your father, to your mother. But look, one is a CEO of a bank in Shanghai. One is like you, a digital nomad traveling around. Fundamentally, both are same in the sense that
Physically away.
But I suppose for me, the biggest difference, right, that I thought about was this thing about, from a parent's point of view, this, to me, this very inevitable kind of worry that we have for their children when they are away in such a manner. Because when we know that someone is in okay, we take the example of a CEO in that bank.
Yeah.
We know that there is stability and there is like, or just from that very personal safety kind of at that level, that concept. And that's where I feel is the biggest difference.
Stability and security.
Not really the stability, but more of maybe the personal safety.
Okay, so personal safety you feel is the difference.
Yes. So for example, right, I think I don't know whether this is a fair analogy, but we talk about like modes of transport in Singapore or around the world. It's the same getting from point A to point B, whether you take a train or you take a car or you drive or you ride a bike. But inevitably, when you ride a bike, right, sometimes parents, loved ones, they just worry about your safety, right? Like you're riding a bike to get from point A to point B, and we always talk about 人包铁不是铁包人. You're wrapping your body around the vehicle instead of like the vehicle protecting you from the elements, right? Do your parents worry about you from that safety? I'm sure they do, but do they communicate that? I'm assuming that they do, because I think parents, they don't. You feel that they don't?
I mean, honestly, what they think, sometimes I feel is also not like what they actually do lah. So when I was in Singapore, my dad was worried about me getting a bike license. He didn't want me to get a bike license.
Yeah.
But then when we were in Thailand, when he came to visit me in Thailand, every single one of us rented a bike, and my dad was okay with that. But I think also like over time he has changed lah. Like his mindset has changed because he has seen that I'm now my own person. I'm capable of taking care of myself, and he is also, I think, very aware now that he cannot protect me forever. Cannot protect me from danger forever.
Are you sometimes careful and aware to not
Tell them stuff
no, not say tell them stuff, like to, I don't know if there's a line that you draw whereby, I don't know whether it's right for me to say that, but I just say anyway. Like whether you are abusing their kindness or their the trust that they have in you.
Why would you call it abusing their trust?
So for example, obviously they feel very safe and they are very confident in you traveling. I think it comes with experience as well. So okay, maybe that's a very bad choice of word. But for example, if today in your travel you are thinking of itinerary that inherently presents a certain amount of danger. Maybe you are going to somewhere like really off the path, and you know that there might be some danger as a solo woman traveling there. Then do you then think about maybe I should not do that because my parents will be worried about me, or do you think that no, they are totally fine, I should just go ahead, and if I die, I die,
I think the main difference is probably because I would feel this way only if my parents do actually think that I'm putting my life in danger, and they're not okay with that.
So you feel that they don't feel that you're putting your life in danger?
I need to tell you about my parents.
Okay.
Like my parents are probably more
gung-ho than you,
than me. So when my brother was like not even 12, like almost 12, and when I was 16 or 17, my parents were like, okay, we're gonna take our diving license because my parents love to dive, and so of course they want their children to dive as well. my mom was the one who signed me up for a windsurfing class. I have asthma, so when I was 16, 17, my mom told my brother and I, okay, we're going to climb like Kota Kinabalu this year. And I like keep in mind I was 16, 17, doing my O-levels. I can't remember which age. I'm pretty sure I was doing my O-levels. And my brother was like doing his PSLE year. But my mom was like, okay, instead of, during the June holidays, right, instead of like studying more and, doing more tuition or whatever, she was like, nope, we're going to climb a mountain. So we're going to climb Kota Kinabalu. So, you can't just like decide, right? You need to practice, you need to train for it. So we spent about 3 to 4 months training for this. And before the trip, my mom suddenly felt, okay, maybe we should get clearance from your doctor because of your asthma. So I went to my doctor. I was like, my mom is asking me if I can get like, medical clearance, whether I can go climb this mountain. And the doctor told my mom, your daughter has like acute asthma. If you do this, you're putting her life in danger. Now, this is a medical doctor telling my mom that if you bring her on the mountain, you are putting her in danger.
Yep.
So you know what my mom told me? She was like, you go back to the doctor and you tell her, if she's such a good doctor, you wouldn't still have asthma. I mean, obviously it didn't make sense because like you can't cure asthma, right? But this is the way that my mom raised me up, which is that it doesn't matter what other people tell you, whether or not you're in danger, you always have to be like, ask yourself. So she asked me, what do you feel like after these few months of like training and stuff like that? Do you feel you can climb this mountain? I said, yeah. As long as I have my medication, I can do anything.
Yep.
And then she was like, okay, if you feel you can do it, we'll do it. So, in the group of us, I think like 10, 12 of us, my dad and I were the first to reach the mountain. So even though I had asthma, like, to other people it looks like medical limitation, I was the fastest. So my parents have always taught me that any limitation that you impose on yourself is from you. And of course, that's why I tell you I have like, rather different parents, because they don't raise me up to think that your limitations make who you are.
Does it then make it difficult for you to share your experiences sometimes when people approach you for advice about this digital nomad kind of lifestyle?
Why difficult?
Because you understand fully well that my parents are different from probably like typical parents or the average parents. Yeah.
I wouldn't assume that they have different parents from me, number one, because that's a huge assumption to make. Also, number two...
But I'm sure you will recognize that your parent in the scale is not the average kind of parent mentality.
I honestly don't know that. Don't know that. Because the thing is that whether or not they are different, right, the people around us are all very similar. Because, you will usually keep people who are similar to you close to you. So, even within my very close circle of friends and family, a lot of their parents are similar to my parents. So I wouldn't actually know, like, because obviously who you interact with is only in this number. And it's not like every day I go out and ask people, hey, what are your parents like? I don't feel the need to know whether there's a difference between how we were raised. I think it's more important for them to realize that, hey, my parents are different. So I do have a lot of people telling me that, like, oh, your parents are very different, your parents are very different. Then to me, it's like, oh, okay, like, to you, my parents are different. But to me, my parents are not different because they're my parents.
Yeah,
right?
they're your parents are your parents, yeah.
But I think it's also important. I usually tell people when they tell me, hey, my parents are very different, they're not like yours, with the inclination that they wish they had my parents, then I would tell them that my parents too had certain doubts whenever I want to make a decision. But at the end of the day, they always tell me, it's your life, your decisions, you're accountable for it. Anything happens, we are there to support. We are here to support you, but your life, your decisions, you be accountable to it. You cannot blame us, And I think that was very important for me, because then I was very keenly aware that anything that I do in my life, I'm responsible for it. So I will never be like, hey, you shouldn't have let me do this, or you should have told me this, you should have told me that. My parents would be like, no, you made the decision. So they can tell me that, like, okay, what I feel is that you should do this, shouldn't do this, but ultimately it's your life, your decisions, you are accountable to it. I mean, the second thing I also tell people is that your parents are also changing. And I think there is definitely a universal truth in the fact that our parents will always want to protect us as children. And no matter what, they will always remember how we were as children, which is why if you want your parents to change their perspective of you, first you have to show them that you are different already. 你长大了, you've changed. You've changed. If they keep seeing you
behaving
the same way, and your patterns of behavior are the same, the way you talk, the way you behave is the same, how are they going to believe that you are different? So if you don't tell your parents that your thoughts and your perspectives have changed, if you don't show them that you have changed and you have matured or you have grown or whatever, it's harder for them to believe you
And
or to trust you.
or there's no reason for them to believe you as well.
No, there's no
because you
reason
didn't show
lah.
evidence. You must show
No,
evidence.
there's no reason.
Okay.
There's never a need to prove reason. Obviously, sometimes it can be like, trust me just because I want you to trust me,
Yep.
But it will make things easier. Like, again, you see, like in any relationship, it's a partnership. Even between your parents and your children, it's the same thing. Help each other to understand each other so that you alleviate burdens instead of adding burdens to each other.
You write a blog that you update quite frequently.
I don't find it updating because honestly, when I write to myself. I don't write to anyone else.
Oh, okay. It's a very pensive blog. Like a lot of deep thoughts and very philosophical kind of thoughts.
You feel?
Yeah, I feel generally the feeling.
Okay.
When you are traveling, do you have a thought process that you deliberately kind of practice? A very mindful kind of practice that you think about life, reflect about life?
No,
or do they just, by life serendipity, they come to you and you just choose to document it down?
I don't actually publish a lot of things that I think about or that I, write. My drafts folder is definitely bigger than my published folder. So recently, right, I discovered that I probably have ADHD. Recently lah. I haven't gotten a proper diagnosis, but just based on what my friends tell me, my friends who have ADHD, based on what other people tell me, I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. People with ADHD feel things very, very intensely, and it's either we have problems focusing on something, and so we need to spread our attention between different things, or when we do get pulled into something so intensely, we'll be hyper focused on something. So usually how I start writing is when I become very pulled into a certain thought or certain path or direction or emotion, and then I write from that perspective. And to be honest, whenever I'm writing, I'm not necessarily consciously writing, but it's my subconscious writing. So even after I finish writing something and I read it like just half an hour later, I'll be like, oh, okay, cool, I didn't know this was how I was feeling. So that's why I write, because it's a way for me to get to know myself better. It's a way for me to journal my thoughts. But it happens very naturally. I can't control it. I also don't wish to control it. But in terms of what I think about, the different things that I think about, I do set an intention. Like, for example, if there's something I don't understand, I do set an intention to say that, like, oh, okay, in the next couple of months, whatever duration of time, I do want to figure this out more. So intention is always the starting point.
Okay. I want to take a look at the list of questions that we came up. Is there anything else you want to add?
Not necessarily.
That you want to talk about? That I'm happy to discuss with you about? I'm happy to discuss with you.
I guess one thing that one intention that I've set recently, or at least in the last 1 year, is that I want to be of service to people in multiple ways. So in terms of content, in terms of questions that are on people's minds, in terms of like the kind of difficulties they experience, what would you say, to your own knowledge, is something that troubles Singaporeans?
My age? To put in context, I'm 34 lah. Or you're talking about generally, or like our segment kind of?
I think let's keep it to you.
Okay.
To you and people who are similar to you.
I think for me it's always actually it's very typical. I would feel it's very typical. Being a sandwich kind of generation, whereby because our generation, many of us, our grandparents married and have children early, and our parents, relative to now, they certainly have probably gotten married earlier, younger, and they had us when they were younger. So for some people like my age, right, I'm 34 anyway, we would still have both parents and grandparents. And people are living longer, right? So there's always the issue of financial costs. That aside though, there's also this struggle with just emotional bandwidth, right? Like for me, sometimes if I don't visit my grandparent for a while, then sometimes I feel a bit guilty about it myself, because I know that he's happy to see me, but at the same time, I have been putting everything else on my priority list on top of like going to see him. And really they just want to like see you, or and also financially as well, you know, when you have so many things that you're dealing with, you're trying to build a business, and you want to save for your own future, save for your marriage, save, like, let's say for my marriage, my retirement, my investment, and you also have to deal with like your parents' allowance or even your grandparents' allowance, you know. So to me, these are very typical kind of stress that I think people have to deal with, or at least I look at my friends and I, you know, these are the kind of stress that we deal with. Very, very typical. I don't think it's something very unique to me. And that to me is like the biggest worry.
So can I clarify? I'm hearing a lot about stress over money and expectations of being a grandchild and being a son.
I think it's also the realization that the mortality is not on their side, right? Because when you're already 80, let's say my grandfather is already 80, 81, 82. I should just share this very personal story. My grandfather, 82 years old, 2 weeks ago started dialysis, and you know that he probably has like maybe a good 5 years or maybe a good 3 years, because kidney has failed, right? So he's on dialysis and all. You can prolong your life, but maybe at best a good 10 years. So you have the expectation that he's not going to be around forever. You know, we all know that we're not going to be around forever. And your own aspirations and your own, this is the thing that I struggle with the most, right? Like my aspiration, my right to live my own life, and to live a life that does justice or to the people who have loved me for a long time.
So you want him to live until a certain age where he can be proud of you?
No, I think he's very proud of me now, whatever I'm doing now.
Okay.
But it's just that I also want to be able to bring him to a nice restaurant every month.
Is that what he wants?
Example. Yeah, he enjoys eating, you know, and all. But although, of course, his dietary requirements is now... Or even just, okay, if you talk about what he really wants, like just time. You know, just like spending time, seeing you, maybe. But it's also, we have limited resources, right, in terms of time.
Really? You don't have time to meet him?
We do. I do, but
You feel it's not enough?
yeah, and that's why, because I'm also the kind of person, right, whereby when I do something, I tend to get very intense.
Yeah.
And I just go like into it. So like after you leave and I have 2 hours here, I'll be like editing, and I have another podcast tomorrow that I need to prepare for and all. And all these things can just like eat up at you, at your bandwidth and your consciousness very quickly, right?
Of course.
So yeah, this is the kind of very...
So you feel guilty about prioritizing what you need. At the same time, you do want to spend more time with him, but it's just like, are you ready to accept that you might have regrets if things don't go the way you thought?
Yeah, so I think for me, the what I try to achieve is that I try and think about, if tomorrow he's not around, will I have any regrets? And I'm trying to work towards that.
So have or not?
No, don't have.
Oh, then okay, what?
Yeah, that's okay. But I know that it's not easy.
It's not easy to keep this up lah.
Yeah, to keep this up.
Regret thing.
And I also know that it's not easy for a lot of people my age to keep this up.
I see.
I think one example, coming back about money again, because I think money is something that living in Singapore and all, we all have to deal with. Yesterday I was reading the news that durian prices, this coming durian season, durian prices are expected to double. So your Mao San Wang from Malaysia, it used to be like $18 per kg maybe.
Yeah.
In this durian season, it's maybe
Wow.
$32 to $36 per kg.
Wow.
So if my parents and my grandparents all love to eat durian, right? One trip to the durian store can cost you $200 or $300. If you want to like really like have a good time indulging in this in this fruit, right?
Yeah.
And so there comes the dilemma, right?
Yeah.
Of okay, today I'm bringing home $4,000.
Yeah.
I'm trying to build this on the side. I need investment into equipment. I need money. That's one part. I have my own expenses I need to deal with, right? Transport, food, insurance, bills. I'm dating a girl. I need to go on dates. I need to we need to survive in today's society, right?
Sorry.
So how do I?
Yeah, cough first. Sorry.
So I need to very consciously budget for this indulgence.
Understand.
$300.
Yeah.
For maybe like 6 kg durian, and one durian can be like 2 kg, right?
Yeah.
So I think these are just things that we have to deal with and understand that there are opportunity cost to everything, every decisions that we make. Just very trivial things, but to me these are the things that they run through my mind on a daily basis, the calculations that I make.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear what I think?
Yeah.
I think it's very normal to want something to last or something to repeat if we enjoy it and if we feel that this experience can benefit or can make the people we love happy, right? So you talk about the example of durian.
Yeah.
What I feel is that at any one point of time, we also need to pick our battles.
Yeah.
Every day there's so many different battles that we have to face, right? And then we have to remember that if we are doing the best that we can with whatever limited resources we have, it's enough. We are enough.
Yeah.
You are enough. What you're giving is enough. It doesn't have to fulfill everything that we want to fulfill, but what we're giving and what we are, trying to achieve is enough. Because life is a marathon. You win today, you might lose tomorrow, but as long as in life we are going upwards, so to speak, and we are improving as people, it's enough. Because we can't win every day, So when I was a child, of course, like as a child, I had like a lot of wants, a lot of material wants. Like, hey, daddy, like my friends all got this pair of shoes that I really want to buy. Like, must be a specific brand, Then, like, daddy, why my allowance so little? Because growing up, my family definitely shifted income class. So it's significantly from when I
to better or downwards?
Better.
To better, okay.
So when I was like much younger, I would say below 9 years old, my family I think were belonging to the middle class, and then later we shifted to upper middle class. So a significant change in terms of what we can afford. But just because we had more money doesn't mean my parents changed like the way they treat money.
Yep.
As a currency. Right? Like today if this glass is $4. And tomorrow, if it's $20, just because I have the $20 doesn't mean I pay it, because my perceived value of the glass is still $4. So it depends. Unless I really want it and I feel that okay, now I think this is worth $20, I will pay that money. Money is just a currency. To me. So it cannot be attached to your identity, your worth, and your your person.
Values also.
No, can't be. Money is just money.
Yep.
Right? It doesn't make you a better or a worse person. So my dad will always tell me, why do you want it? Do you want it so that your friends will like you more? Or do you want it because you really like it? And I ask myself, why do I want it? My current shoes are very comfortable, but at the end of the day, if I just like throw attention and just be like, no, I just want it, my dad would buy it for me. And sometimes, it took me many years to realize that in order to just buy that pair of shoes for me, right, he had to forego his own spending on himself. Like, so instead of, buying that pair of jeans that he really needs because they got a hole already, he will just patch the hole and save that money to spend on me. The minute I realized this, I also understood that everything that we experience, you know, we put a perceived value to it. And ultimately, what's the most important thing?
Everything that we experience, we put a perceived value on it.
So experience in terms of like material, whether we can touch, whether we can whatever. So for example, this year durian very expensive, right? Then don't eat durian, no? 不是讲没有吃过嘛, right? It's not like you have never eaten durian before. I give you another example. Let's say I know that my family really enjoys skydiving. So we have done skydiving before, but it's expensive. It's not a very cheap like hobby, right? And it's something that we cannot really afford to keep doing. But do we need to keep doing skydiving or not in order to enjoy life? No, what?
I think skydiving is very, our Channel 8 kind of drama, right? We always like to have this plot year after year, right? About this concept of the Chinese reunion dinner. And like feeling the expectations and the stress of preparing for the reunion dinner.
Oh, yeah?
Or preparing for...
Sorry, I really don't watch.
For Chinese New Year. Recently, there was this video that was taken down as well because of Hari Raya. Then, there was this story about how this family was working very hard to get out of their rental home to prepare for Hari Raya. Then it was flagged out for having racial undertones. So it was a government-led kind of video. So it was taken down. But so I think it's a bit different from like skydiving. So like let's say Chinese New Year, right? If I have the stress of like having a very good steamboat dinner with my family during Chinese New Year, of course I can think about it like, okay, maybe this year just don't have steamboat lor. Just like have 3-4 dishes. The whole idea behind it is we all get together and just spend the New Year Eve together and to count down and to look forward to a new year, right? But sometimes we are not so woke yet lah. We still... And I also think that it's good intention sometimes as well to like just want to make the people that you love happy.
Yeah.
And
I think what you're talking about is avoiding being disappointed.
Yeah, and disappointing people that we love, and also disappointing yourself also for not being able to provide and not being able to do that.
Trying to control things that you can't control. Disappointment is just a feeling. It's just an emotion. It comes and it goes. But if it comes, it stays, and it makes you feel bad by yourself, and it affects your daily life, then it doesn't serve a purpose in your life. Disappointment is just an emotion, just like happiness or sadness or anger. They're all emotions, they're all signposts to tell you, oh, okay, if I'm disappointed or if I'm sad because of this, then it maybe like shows me that, oh, okay, I want to be able to financially provide for my family in a way that if we feel like eating steamboat, we can eat steamboat. But if that disappointment festers, it takes root in your life and it makes you feel like a horrible person every single day, it does not serve any purpose for you. So choose your emotions as you would choose your clothing, as you would choose your clothes. Every morning you wake up, you choose like the clothing you put on, right, for a certain purpose, right? If this time I'm going to work, maybe I wear something more work appropriate. If I'm going out with friends, if it's hot, if it's cold, you wear clothing that's appropriate. Similarly, and you wear clothes that are functional, right? That would serve a certain purpose. Similarly, pick the emotions. So it's not to say that you avoid the emotions. Be aware and then sit with the emotion. Like if I feel disappointed, okay, I sit with it. I give it attention, give it acknowledgement, and when it doesn't serve me anymore, I let it go.
Just be able to just let it go lah.
I mean, the how to let go is a completely different conversation lah.
Is there something that is giving you stress in your life right now at this stage?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Do you sometimes think about like, okay, so if I'm taking like a significant pay cut to do this, and how do I save for my retirement? Do I think about my retirement? Okay, let's say for retirement. Do you talk to yourself about your retirement? And also because you were a consultant before, right? In the FA industry.
Okay, so currently what I feel about stress is when there is a certain topic that I'm not at ease with. Either because I've made a decision that I don't necessarily agree with, or there is a certain restriction placed upon my life that I can't do anything about. That's how you feel stressed, right? So at the current moment, I don't feel any stress because I feel that I am in control of what I can control, and anything else that I can't control, I let it be.
So you're at peace.
I'm very
with
at peace
the rest
with
of
my
okay,
life.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. So I feel like that's why I don't have stress. And I'm also not afraid of stress, because again, stress is just a signpost to tell you that something in your life is not aligned with how you really feel and what you want. So let's talk about the retirement thing. Previously, if retirement was a stress to me, it's only because I know that retiring in Singapore is very expensive, and I'm afraid that I can't afford it. Then I'll ask myself, why is this a stress? Is it because I don't want to pay so much money just to retire? Or is it because I don't actually agree that we need so much money to retire? You know how there's that saying that like, oh, you need like $1 million to retire or whatever. It's a myth. I mean, it's not a myth, but you only believe it if you feel that that's how much money you need. But it's not. I mean, some people don't have $1 million by the time they need to retire, and they still can retire comfortably. So obviously it's something that's
Contextual
someone's
as well,
truth,
yeah.
but it might not be yours, right? So for me, I mean, if you ask me what I think about retirement now, I do have like certain things put in place, or I do have like certain plans so that I can one day not worry about, money, so to speak. And they can be like from different tools, different strategies. And so because I know that, okay, these are my options, I'm not limited to just one way of retiring, no stress. Yeah.
What do you see is your relationship with Singapore now as like this label that we put, like our land, our country, our home? What's this relationship that you have with Singapore?
I think being Singaporean means to me that I have a right to live here.
Okay. That's all.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and also we hold a passport.
Correct.
We
it's
have
a citizenship. It's your right. It's your right that is recognized and accepted by every other sovereign country in the world, that this is where you have the right to live. Which means, because I'm considered a Singapore citizen, the government will always protect me to a certain extent, and will help me and will offer help if I need it. So that's I'm very proud to be a Singaporean in that aspect, because I do feel that our government has put in enough energy and effort to make sure that at the end of the day, every citizen will be taken care of basic
reasonably lah.
correct, basic rights, reasonably, to the best of of course, like there's always room for improvement, but if I compare being a Singaporean to other citizens, outside, I think we've done this very well, and that's why so many people want to be Singaporean, right? Yeah, and that's why so many people come here and they be like, they adore being in this country. They want to stay here longer. There's a reason for that. But on top of that, I definitely also feel like Singapore is a place where I can call home. Again, home is a feeling, it's not a place. But it's because I have shared experiences with people. I speak the language Singlish. I have common friends. My family is here. Singapore will always be a place where I come back, I can feel at home.
So emotionally though, do you feel like I want to retire here? One day I'll stop this traveling. I'm going to, because you mentioned that you like kids, right? Do you intend to have children?
I don't know.
Okay.
I intend to, but I don't know if I will.
So let's say if you do, are you inclined to want to bring your children up in Singapore?
As of right now, no. Because, like I said, the only reason I'm not in Singapore is because the city environment is not somewhere I can thrive in, mentally, emotionally, and it's very expensive to live in Singapore. Meaning, if I can find what I want in Singapore somewhere else for a fraction of the cost, and if I can find somewhere else where I feel I can contribute financially, mentally, emotionally as well, why not? Because home is a feeling, right? So if I can feel like I'm at home other places, why limit myself to just one location?
What kind of place do you best thrive at? Is it like the beach or the mountains, or like just somewhere?
I would say so far I haven't really found a place where I want to call like my base. Like everyone's always asking me, where's my base? I always say that I don't have. But I do enjoy being in the sea a lot, because I think to me the ocean is a completely different world that we know very little of. It's almost like going to space. So going to the sea is cheaper, right? is more attainable than going to the outer space. So I like anywhere that's close to the sea, so that the proximity to entering a whole new universe, a whole new world is easy to get. I like islands in general. I like warm places, and I like somewhere with spicy food. So I would say Asia lah. For now, based on the places I've been in, I enjoy being in Asia.
Oh, you still enjoy being
I
in
still
Asia
enjoy
more?
being in Asia more,
Okay.
yeah. I was stuck in, not say stuck, but I was limited to being in Europe because the borders were more open there compared to here in the last 2 years.
So what's really your favorite city? Do you have a favorite city to be?
City?
Yeah.
I enjoyed New York a lot.
Okay.
New York and actually Melbourne.
Is it a bit of like a contradictory kind of thing, because you just mentioned that you don't really suit to be in a city,
But if I have to choose
but
one
you
city
choose
that
a
I like,
city. So what is it? What's the allure about New York that makes
because
New
you
York
asked me
the
what is my
choice?
favorite city, ma.
Yeah. So what about New York?
I like that New York is, firstly, it has this energy where it's like a combination of many, many different people's energy, because New York is one of those places where literally people from all around the world like to come, or they somehow meet. And it's that exchange of energy that I enjoy, because you're constantly given the opportunity to learn something from someone who is so different from you. Different background, different everything. So New York has that, has that energy to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you know Casey Neistat. He's like a vlogger, the godfather of vlogging.
Oh yeah?
And he was based in New York for so basically his story was that he became a father at the age of 16, 17. Then the wife, the partner left, and he brought up his own son, and he decided to go to New York to be a filmmaker. So it was a very nice story, and he always spoke about the magic of New York, where everybody is there for a dream. Nobody is there in New York to just be a nobody. Like everyone's hustling for something, he feels. Like everyone is working towards a dream in New York. And that's where magic
Everyone
happens.
he interacts with lah, I guess.
Yeah, his universe lah. His universe. What are your plans for the future?
I don't really have plans.
You don't really have plans.
I mean, if you're talking about immediate future, in the next couple of years, my intention, like I said, is to be of service to other people.
How? Yeah.
I think the most immediate way is to express myself accurately, so that through my journey of whatever journey I'm going through, people who can relate will also see that it's doable. Firstly, to heal is possible. To go through trauma and to heal from that is possible. And how, right? Because people always tell you, time will heal or whatever, like something will happen, but they didn't really tell you how. So I think the how is very important for me, because when I was like flailing around on my own, the how was not immediately known to me. And if I had someone who could just hold my hand and be like, these are the possible ways that you can do something. It's like I want to bake a cake, but I don't know how. And then people are just telling me, just bake lah.
So what's one of it?
How to heal?
Yeah.
I think everything starts with an intention.
Okay.
So we first have to acknowledge that we are hurt and that we want to heal. That's step one. Yeah.
Step 2?
Step 2. Okay, firstly, I don't believe that healing is linear now.
Okay.
Yeah, so but at least for me, I can speak from my experience. After setting the intention to heal, to hold myself in a loving space, so that I don't judge myself so much. Because I think what I was doing a lot to myself was judging myself, like being very harsh on myself. And then, after some point, I'm like, you know what, I'm going nowhere. Because judgment makes you go like in a circle. You're just going round and round and round. You're blaming. And then after a while, you just get very tired. Like, okay, you know what? I'm going nowhere. So it's to say that, like, okay, you that your past is your past already. Let's just focus on figuring out why and who you are. And then let's just focus on what you want in the future. Therapy was a very big breakthrough for me.
Okay.
Therapy, counseling, life coaching, whatever people want to call it. Because sometimes there are experts out there who have done this for a while.
And they are trained to help you.
And they are trained to help us.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, for example, if I want to learn pottery, can I do it on my own? Can. But if I really want to be a good potter, or if, let's say, I want to learn how to do pottery fast, then just go to a potter and say, like, can you teach me how? Maybe this potter's way of doing something is different from you, but it doesn't matter because at least you know the basics. Then, okay, advanced one, you go and find like other people, whatever it is. So for me, I feel like I took 1.5 years to kind of like actually go for counseling. And that was a big breakthrough for me because I was then able to really uncover certain truths that were there. I could describe it, but I couldn't put a name to it. And putting a name to certain things that you're feeling, putting a name to certain things that you've experienced helps you to realize you're not crazy or that it's not that you are abnormal. You are, like, people have experienced this before, which is why there is a name to it.
So you mean the medical term to it?
Not medical term, but like just anything like...
Or like it's disappointment or it's...
Or like, you know, your...
guilt or...
Correct. Like, for example, trauma in itself, right? The word trauma. Like, people always like, no lah, I never experienced some trauma, like, you know. Because they don't want to, like, accept, I guess. Or maybe they don't feel like... A lot of times when people reject something, right? That is very clearly what they went through.
Yeah.
They don't understand or they feel ashamed of it. So... then you have to choose. Do I want to understand it, number one? And do I want to stop being ashamed of myself?
Okay.
So that's where the loving space comes in. You know, you have to realize that it's okay. It's okay to feel all of these things. I guess another thing is also to be very aware that who you are yesterday, is definitely not who you are tomorrow. Because you are in control of your thoughts, your actions, or you can be in control of your thoughts and your actions. So if you don't like your past, or if you don't like who you were in the past, you don't like your actions in the past, what you've done in the past, then make sure you don't do it again. You know, but it's okay. It's past already. So just work on yourself, like make sure that you understand why you did certain things. I think sometimes it's also when people hit a block, right, it's usually because they don't understand something. You don't understand, then you cannot move on. So you have to keep, like, you know, you will keep having recurring thoughts like why. So if you don't really understand something, seek help. It's fine to seek help. Once you seek help, you move past it, then move on to the next challenge. It's like with climbing a mountain. If let's say you know that there are 14 peaks, you don't reach the first peak already and then like go back down, right? You want to go to the next peak. So, and then also after every peak, find rest, recharge, be around people that recharge you, seek out higher vibrational patterns because they do help to elevate you to the next peak, so to speak. And at all times, never think that what you know is enough.
Okay.
I think for me, I always seek like more understanding, more growth, you know. Not that like I need to have more or like know more, but just the awareness that like what I know is only what I know. It's not all there is to know. Yeah.
Yeah. I read about this recently, about what you just talked about how we can change. It's in our capacity to change.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like the person was saying that we are not an oak tree. Like an oak tree has no choice but to be an oak tree. Like today is an oak tree, tomorrow is an oak tree. You know, the tree is a tree, the roots are in the soil and all. But we can change, and that's why we are humans.
Yeah.
So this
also,
thing,
sorry if I can like jump on that and say something. We call it oak tree.
Yeah.
If we can actually communicate with trees, right? They might not think that they are trees. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
it's a very egoistic thing to always think about what we
And also
think, what we feel.
from like the leaf perspective or from the monkey's perspective,
humans are the one who give like
from the earthworm perspective,
yeah,
it's
we
all
give their
different, right?
identity, right? It might not be what they actually identify with. So it's also to remember that to be human is to be quite egoistic.
And also very narrow-minded sometimes. It's our perspective.
Maybe.
Yeah, I've been struggling with this concept of ego as well, actually, because I identify myself as a Buddhist, and in Buddhism, this concept of ego is something that the Buddha has, always preach about. So it's something that I'm working on myself as well. So you wanting to be of service to others, right? Now after elaborating on all these things, so do you see the role as like you want to, I don't know, maybe be a therapist or just be an advocate, be an activist about something?
I have no idea. I have no idea, honestly.
So it's up for interpretation or where life brings you lah.
I think it's just a conscious decision that whenever I'm exchanging energy with people, I do want to kind of like help them, because I think to want to help is definitely a decision you have to make. So to be of service to others is really just the intention that if I can do something within my power, even if it causes me inconvenience, I would like to help you.
And do you think of doing it at scale or just one-to-one you're happy with it?
Yeah, one-on-one I'm happy as well. I have no idea how big the scale I can do. Honestly, I really don't know. I feel like I do feel that my life is going in such a direction where I have the opportunity to help more than one person somehow, in some way, one day, I don't know how. I'm like ready for it. I live for it. But at the moment, I don't really know how I can't like tell you how it's going to happen. But that's my intention lah. So it's not like, I must help like more than 1,000 people. No, I don't have such like goals. It's just I just want to be of service to people.
I want to ask you one last question.
Okay.
Is it difficult to accept a romantic relationship again, find love again after a very negative experience?
To find no. I think it's very easy to find love everywhere, because at the default of us, all of us is love, right?
Yeah.
Romantic, like I think I like the way you say romantic love.
Yep.
I think to accept
Is the
is
barrier,
difficult
right?
one,
Yeah, it's a difficult part.
because then you're like I said, we're all fighting different battles, right? But the biggest battle for me is that I'm worthy enough. It's to also kind of like, because sometimes like when you already have a wound, it's a wound. You can't turn back time and like erase the wound, right? But there will be a scar. So that scar makes you a little bit more aware of your body. Let's say if I have a scar on my arm, I'm definitely aware of it because I'm afraid to hurt the same part again, right? But then I think for me, that kind of went away where I started realizing that my worthiness, or whether I'm worthy of love, doesn't depend on someone else giving it to me. In a romantic sense lah. Doesn't. Yeah. I don't attach my self-worth or whether I'm worthy of love to whether a romantic partner gives it to me.
Sure, but in terms of accepting it, because
Yeah.
I would imagine that there are people who are listening to this, right? There are some people who have also been hurt by a hurtful relationship, marriage, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever you call it, and they are also struggling to find the peace with themselves and to also move on to the next worthy relationship. Is there a process that you went through?
All starts with an intention.
Okay.
So if let's say I set intention that I do want to accept another partner's love for me, I will work towards it. And there's no one way to do it lah. But I think for me, what helped was also that I do actually have a partner who really manages to show me that his words and his actions match. Then it's easy to trust him because, he doesn't just show me in terms of like empty promises. He actually shows me that he loves me. So I think it's two things also. You know, like one thing is you have to set intention that this is what you want. The other thing is to really see whether your partner can fulfill what they are saying they want to do. That makes sense?
Yep.
So everyone's journey is like very different.
Yep.
But for me, I think the difficult part to accept is also because I was definitely still nursing a very deep wound. But what helped is that my current partner didn't try to fix me. My current partner didn't budge in and say that like, okay, you know what, let me heal you. Let me take away your pain. No. All he did was help me in a very loving space to support me while I'm nursing my own wound. That definitely helped a lot, because then it's almost as if he is helping me to reparent whatever inner child wound I have. Because to be really, really frank, I think what happened with my divorce is not the real pain that I was trying to get over. You know, because I felt like I wasn't that upset by the divorce, but I felt like the divorce was a trigger to trauma that has happened in the past that I suppressed and that I neglected.
Okay.
So the divorce triggered a lot of like very, very deep wounds, you know. That is the difficult part to kind of really get past. Because if I agree that we should be divorced, and if I'm happier after the divorce, why is it that I can't get over the divorce? So to me, that was a question I posed myself. Then I realized that, actually it's not really the divorce or the relationship I'm grieving over. It was just a trigger that brought out all of these things that I once felt from like so many things that happened in the past that I never healed before. I never healed from before.
How do you work on your intentions now? Do you have a mindful practice that you do, like you journal or you write it down or you meditate at it, you think of your goals?
I think intention can be set very, very differently. Some people journal, some people meditate. Like what I really do is, I guess I just repeatedly like talk to myself. So for example, if I set intention, let's say I say, okay, I want to be of service to people. That's what I talk about. I just keep repeating it to myself, lor. But I repeat it to myself not because I want to force myself to do it, but naturally when my thoughts come around, and then I realize that, this is my intention, I'll just be like, just remember this is your intention. So the same intention is repeated in my mind again and again and again. That alone is enough, because then it would generate.
So you water it lah.
It would, in a way, correct. It would generate the positive vibes that I want. It will affect how I make decisions. It will affect the things that I say. So the intention is very important. And I guess the best way is to repeat the intention to yourself again and again. And then, actually repeating it helps, because if let's say you feel a rejection happening somewhere, somehow, then question whether or not your intention is really what you want. Because sometimes you might set an intention that's not really what you want. And you wouldn't know until you keep repeating yourself and checking whether or not your actions and your words align with the intention or not. Then sometimes like people will realize that, actually my intention is very different from my actions. Then ask yourself why.
Very self-aware. So we need to be very self-aware lah, in a sense.
Not need to be lah, but I guess being self-aware helps lah. Being self-aware helps. Even wanting to be self-aware is an intention.
Yeah.
Or can be an intention.
Yeah.
Some people don't want to be self-aware. Then okay lor, there's no right and wrong what. Yeah.
And some of us give ourselves a lot of excuses to not be self-aware. Like we just believe that I'm so caught up with things, life is so busy.
Okay, so what I believe is we pick the battles we think we can win. So sometimes if let's say we feel like,
also, actually.
sometimes if we feel we cannot win that battle, right, we put it aside first. Just put it aside. So I don't necessarily see it as an excuse, but I do feel that maybe sometimes when their minds, kind of avoid certain topics, it's really because they feel like, wow, if I really get into this, I cannot, and they have that feeling like, oh no, I cannot. I'm not ready to face that. So they set it aside first. So
and later we die with regrets.
Then
later we die with regrets.
But
because you set it aside.
Like the fact of the matter is, you die already, right? How can you have any regrets? It's the human form that has regrets. You die already. How can you have any regrets after you are dead? Unless you do believe that after you die, you go somewhere, and that somewhere carries the burdens and the weights of your current life.
Okay lah, or to say you have regrets on your deathbed lah.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, have regrets on your deathbed.
Yeah.
Or in your last few years.
Yeah. But I mean, some people don't mind having regrets on their deathbed, which is completely fine as well.
Well, I suppose you never know until you are there, right?
Yeah, I mean,
What
you have never almost died before. You won't know.
Yeah, you won't
have
know
any
until you are
regrets
there and you think about what you really regret at that point of time.
I think regrets is also a signpost to tell you where you have invested too much time and energy that isn't something you actually care about.
Not worth it. And you feel like...
Yeah, I mean, if let's say you have invested so much of your time and energy in something, but you don't actually care that much about it, then it becomes a regret because you feel like you've wasted that time and energy when you could have put it into something else that you actually really care about more.
Cool. Jane, do you have anything else to add?
No?
Yeah, I appreciate you coming down here today.
Yeah.
I think it's a...
I appreciate you too.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation that is... I mean, there's no theme to it. We just went everywhere, but I really liked it. And I think that... you know, there's this term wokeness that's being thrown around
Oh yeah?
by a lot of people nowadays. You're woke, I'm not woke. Like, this is very woke. And I think it's...
Such a gen... I don't even know what the new generation is called. What we are? We are what generation? Are we Gen Z?
You are 29, right? 30.
30 already.
30 already. Yeah. We are the Gen...
Same generation, right?
We are the millennials.
Okay.
We are the millennials. The next one is the Gen Z.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does being woke mean?
Being woke means like you are very
Self-aware.
self-aware. I think it's up for different interpretation as well. Some people may think it as a result of having a certain amount of wisdom and awareness that comes from life experiences.
Yeah.
So and therefore you become woke. And some people just impose their own standards of wokeness.
Yeah, actually I really don't know like what being woke means lah. I mean, I have my own definition, but I don't know what other people think of.
What's your definition?
To me,
Do people come up to you and say that I think you're very woke?
then I ask them what do you mean, oh?
But have there been people who say that to you?
I'm sure, but I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Do people write to you?
Yeah. Okay, I
After
guess
they-
if there's anything I want to say is that I encourage anyone and everyone to write in and to talk to me because like I said, my intention is to be of service to people.
Yeah.
I do spend my time and energy replying to people. And so sometimes like people will write to me like either on IG, email to me. Sometimes like I would even agree to like Zoom calls. If you write to me and I haven't replied, do know that I will reply to you like sooner or later. But like feel free to write in because I am choosing to be that person.
Yeah, I think it's yes,
to be that person who will respond to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because for a fact, I know many people who say that, but they don't
Yeah.
respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, to my best of my abilities lah. If let's say tomorrow I get like 500 messages, then I have to take my time, right? One by
No,
one.
but because where I'm coming from is you have the intention to be
yeah,
of service, and therefore you are,
correct. And
not just paying like because in the midst of starting this podcast, right? I have listened to other podcasts.
Okay.
And there are a lot of podcasters who say that, you you have any feedback and all, please write to us. And I've written to them very long ago.
But they don't.
Yeah, but I haven't heard from them, so maybe they have not.
Their actions and their words.
Yeah, I feel like there's a mismatch lah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes the way they respond is different also. So that's what I want to say as well. Sometimes like the way I respond, if let's say I miss your message, but then I say things like, some people have asked me this, then if you are considered some people, that's my way of responding to you.
Like I have made, similar to you, maybe I have made a very conscious effort to reply to everybody who takes the effort to write to me, share their thoughts with me, appreciate that, and therefore I try and it's totally manageable for me now. It's not like as though I'm getting like hundreds, but there are times I can't because like if a video goes a bit of viral on TikTok, then I can't reply to like 200 comments, and some of the comments don't really elicit a response.
Yeah, correct.
They are just like something,
Just a comment.
Yeah. But I always feel like people who have very consciously and deliberately written to me to share their thoughts with me, I would reply. Yeah. Okay, great. How can people reach out to you?
Usually Instagram DMs
Yeah.
or emailing me. Yeah.
Okay. I wish you all the best.
You too.
I think you are living your life, and I'm very happy for you.
Thank
You know,
you.
just from a very human point of view, right? To see someone else being very at peace with themselves. To me, that's what I strive for. I just, as a human, as a Buddhist, you know, just to be at peace with my own thoughts, with my own inner kind of conflict all the time.
Yeah.
Like there are always, like you say, there are always fires that has to be put out, right? But after you put it out, you can let it go and be at peace. And after this fire, there are things that we can't be at peace with, and that's why we live a troubled life, I believe. And when I meet someone who is at peace, right, be it a retired businessman or be it you are living a life less like the label is a digital nomad, but the fact is you are at peace. I'm very happy for you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to catching up with you again the next time you're back.
Yeah.
Or
Anytime.
or we can, you know, do another one down the road to just talk about your new experiences.
For sure.
Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Okay.